Some discussions may touch on legal and tax topics, but nothing contained in these episodes should be considered tax or legal advice. David and I are not accountants nor licensed attorneys. Please consult with your tax and legal professionals for advice on your own unique situations. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Did It Close podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, David Dirkschneider, holding it down out there in Oklahoma City. And today we're lucky enough to have Elisabeth Soose, who's joining us, who is an owner-operator here in Pittsburgh, but is also the president of the board of the Apartment Association of Metropolitan in Pittsburgh, which we have tons of questions on, all the great work that AAMP's doing. I'm proud to be a member of AAMP as well, too. So I know we've got a chance to know each other. So Elisabeth, we'll kind of kick it over to you. Give us a little bit about yourself, your background. Are you born and raised in Pittsburgh? And kind of just a little bit of history of yourself and how you got involved with AAMP.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about AAMP. So yes, I am born and raised in Pittsburgh. I've got a great family. I'm blessed that both my family and my husband's family are, really based here. I think like most people, I took not a direct route to real estate. But I think that I find that interesting with real estate people. I find that it wasn't always our first career. And so actually I went to Duquesne University. I have a master's in physical therapy. I worked as a physical therapist at Shadyside Hospital.
What year did you graduate?
So from my master's 2005. Yeah. If you're going to
We were on campus at the same time. I was at Duquesne Duke. I graduated undergrad in 2003 and law school in 2006.
Oh, you're kidding me. Okay.
Yeah.
Would have been on the bluff at the same time.
That's right.
Yeah, but that was back then when I was nerdy and studying all the time for physical therapy. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun. But I am really lucky. My parents are in real estate, and they've got a more interesting story than me. They're both, immigrants that started their own business, buying one duplex at a time, and always real estate was just in my house. They were just a mom and pop when they started. And, we would get the calls for leasing at the house. And, I'm talking about in the 80s and 90s. And my dad never pushed any of us into real estate. He was just like, do whatever you want to do. So I thought physical therapy was great. I still think it's a great field. But, after all that schooling and everything, I got a job that was great. And right after that, my husband was asked to move to the UK for work. And we were literally just married. And we said, of course we'll do it, because we were young and said, that'll be great. Well, little did I know when I got there, I couldn't work as a physical therapist because my license didn't transfer. And because Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh, I was there for 1 week and met a woman at an event that I went to. And she just thought I was a New York expat, that, all the American women that were there were from some investment banker husband from New York. And she said, let me guess, you just moved from New York? I said, actually, Pittsburgh, which anyone I had mentioned Pittsburgh to prior to this woman was like, where is that? I'm talking like 2006 London, right? This is pre-iPhone. So I said, actually, I'm from Pittsburgh. I said it sort of apologetically, and her face dropped and said, I grew up in Squirrel Hill. I went to Alderdice. And I said, oh my gosh. So she offered me a job. And the company she worked at helped international expats in the UK. And I quickly came to realize that real estate is so interesting. I mean, that was the number one thing. Like when people would move, where are you going to live? Where'd you find a flat? Where's your job? And our whole job was to help people get settled. So you moved to a certain neighborhood. We would help you figure out where your kids would go to school, where to get your hair cut, what was going on. Again, it's funny. This is pre, Google Maps and pre-iPhone. People would come to the office and we would unfold a map to say, we're here, the school's here, they're putting in Whole Foods for the first time. It's here, and I just realized real estate was such a driver, right? If a new property was going up, if a new tenant was coming in, and I'll never forget, my dad came to visit and came to our office, and I was like, Dad, real estate is so interesting. What am I doing? And he said, well, when you move back, do you want to come, work? with us? And I said, yes. Like I took the offer. I was still in the UK. So it's interesting. I kept my PT license up for about 10 years because I thought, well, what if I don't love it? But after a decade, I was like, okay, I think I'm good. So that's how I got into real estate. So when I came back, we're owner operators. We manage our own properties. We have residential and commercial real estate. And, once I really got into the thick of it, my dad said there's this great group, AMP, which he had been a part of, but sort of, not intimately like on the board, but a lot of his, close colleagues were. And I started getting involved, and then the rest is history. So now here I am.
What year did you move back from the UK?
So we moved back in 2009. Yeah.
And then it's interesting just kind of thinking of Pittsburgh's real estate life cycle. I always kind of joke about like Pittsburgh really didn't get put on the map. I say two events happened in the Great Recession. We
Yeah.
didn't decline as much as everybody else,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then when Uber's advanced technology kind of got announced in Pittsburgh, that was kind of another thing that kind of made the internet, like everybody on the national stage say, why are they setting up in Pittsburgh? Right. Like, and it was like, yeah, those were kind of two kind of watershed moments for the Pittsburgh real estate industry. So
obviously we know what apartment association is. Can you explain that on a national level and also AMP locally?
Yeah. So AMP locally was born over 50 years ago. So we started the Builders Association of Metropolitan Pittsburgh, or BAMP, if you're familiar with. They were the first group. And in 1974 is what we pin our birth to. I believe the Pennsylvania state was looking to make some changes legally to like a landlord tenant act. And a lot of the members of the Builders Association were also multifamily owners, right? So they weren't just the construction companies doing the building, but they were also owners as well. So they realized that there was a need to have a trade organization represent, multifamily owners. And so we became a sister organization of AMP. So we became the Apartment Association of Metropolitan Pittsburgh. So we made it our goal and our mission to really focus on, the support of multifamily owners, not just the building side. And so we lived together like that for decades. And then we realized a few years ago that, really sort of our focuses were changing a little bit, especially I think with the building boom that was happening here in Pittsburgh a few years ago. And then, there was just a lot more pressure on the legislation of apartment owners. And so we bifurcated from BAMP, and we became totally autonomous in our own organization.
what year was that you said you came back to Pittsburgh in 2009? What
Right.
year did you start getting involved in the apartment association?
I mean, I think it was a good 6 or so years later. I would say like 2015, 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were I know we were chatting right before the call, and you said kind of what drew you was some of the charitable aspects was kind of one of the first things that you got involved with as well too. So
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first meetings I went to, they passed around a sheet of paper and said, well, write down which committee you'd be interested in joining, right? And we've got a communications committee and a membership committee. And I saw that there was a charitable committee, and I thought, oh, well, that's really interesting. So I, asked some questions. And at the time we were supporting Veterans Place, which you both would find really interesting. And they're an amazing group. So we were still together with BAMP at the time, and the builders were really super, super involved with this and helping, because they were actually constructing a new facility for the Veterans Place on Washington Boulevard. I don't know if either of you have been to that location, but it's really a fantastic place. They do, classes for veterans. They help house, homeless veterans. And so we were raising money and helping to build that facility and wrap it up for them. And one of the most impactful things that I found when I was there is they were at the time, and you'd have to correct me if it's still the case or not, I'm not sure, but they were one of the only places that would actually take someone in who was under the influence. So a lot of homeless shelters, unfortunately, if someone does show up and they're obviously, under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they can't keep them. but they had a safe place to encourage them to come in, to sober them up, and then just offer them support. And I thought that that was really awesome, and that started spinning my mind on the whole homeless aspect of veterans and just, people in general. So once we, supported them for a few years, we got to our fundraising goals. We helped, we were there for the ribbon cutting ceremony opening this facility. We were then looking for the next group to support. And I was introduced to the Homeless Children Education Fund through my father-in-law, actually, who was on the board at the time. So we had been supporting them just as a family. But I realized what an amazing job this group was doing. So their goal is to help, really eradicate homelessness through the goal of education, because they know that if someone can graduate high school, they're exponentially more able to live on their own and, have a living wage that will promote not being homeless due to income. And they're an amazing group that they have tutors, they have after school programs, they have, supplies, and their whole goal is education from, preschool all the way up through post secondary. So I brought this to the AMP board and I said, you've got to meet these people. And, we voted to support them. So what we focus on with our funds that we raise is what we call the Hope Through Learning scholarships. So these are $2,500 scholarships that we award to anyone that has graduated high school but is pursuing any sort of post-secondary work. So it could be a 4-year degree, it could be a technical institute, a trade school, whatever it is. This $2,500 to them is like an acknowledgement of, you did this. You graduated with all of these obstacles in front of you and you're still in school. And, it's really just saying, way to go. And they are free to use this money for anything they may need. If it's technology, a laptop, bus or transportation fees, childcare. A lot of them put it just even towards their loans, which is really admirable, I think, too. And we've had just so many success stories, and we've had scholars that year after year will reapply and they'll get the scholarship again. And we've had some of them speak at our annual dinner. Brian, I think you
Yep.
were there this year. And I mean, these, we can't call them kids anymore when they're in college, but these young adults, I mean, they're incredible. I always tell, the people, at these dinners, and, we've got banks and, big companies that come and, they're supporters of AMP. I always say, these are the people you want to hire. These are the people who can dig through adversity and, don't let things get in their way, and don't take no for an answer. These are the people that you want, in your positions.
I was really amazed. Even just last year's dinner, just the poise with, I mean, the young lady, like, it was like, you could tell that it was just like, she was in a room full of, 60, 80 people. And it
Yeah.
was like, she just owned the room. And at a young age,
Really.
it was truly amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're incredible. So that part of AMP, I think, is so awesome too, that we have this mission to support, and we've been delivering on that. So it's something I'm really proud of our group about, and they show up with their time and their money, and it's really great.
And that's the Hope Through Learning Award, or because I when I looked up online, I saw like several different things. There was Hope Through Learning, and then children's oh my gosh, children's education or homeless children education fund.
Yes.
Which one, or is that are they the same thing? Just one's the award, and one's the entity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So Homeless Children Education Fund, it goes by HCEF. That is that's the group,
Okay. Makes sense.
The Hope Through Learning Award is a very specific award within HCEF that our funds that we've been raising have been, sort of laser focused too.
Okay.
Mhm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you normally would start with, like, all the things that, AMP's core function, and then probably talk about the collateral. And I think it's actually interesting that it's such an integral part. We actually started with the charitable arm of AMP. But with that, I guess, kind of going back, Can you kind of talk a little bit about like what is AMP's kind of core function as it's kind of like kind of as it was born and then as it sits today? So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now we're a trade organization. We have approximately 200 members, and the members are anything from apartment owners, builders, developers, managers, investors, financial institutions, suppliers, all who work within the multifamily housing industry. So really, we've got, two sides of our membership. We call them owners and we call them vendors. And so the owners, we have members who have just a handful of units, and we have people who own 1,500 plus units. And we're talking just within, the Pittsburgh area. So we've got, really big stakeholders, and we've got the people just starting out, or maybe, they've got full-time careers doing something else. And this is, they're just dipping their toe into real estate. But our goal is to, look out for our industry and look out for our members. So one of our biggest, I think, successes is our government and law committee, which you're a part of, Brian. So we are there to, have our eyes open and our ears open to what's going on in legislation, what's going on with our council people, what's being brought ahead of, city council, and just, making sure that our industry is, not getting, just pushed off to the side, that we're making sure we're doing what's fair and what's right. And then we've got and I'm sorry, so that's government and law. And then we also have like a membership committee. So we're planning events, golf outings, membership mixers, things like that, to get our people together, because a lot of us, especially our owner operators like me, this is when we can talk to our colleagues, and my friends, that have these other businesses, that's when we can get together and network, and also, say, hey, I'm facing this issue, or hey, who are you using now for this or that? And it's really great for us to be able to have a group that we can go to that we trust. So that's a big thing that we do, is our membership events. And those are always, really great, a lot of fun. Like I said, I think real estate people are interesting. And then we've got, our events committee. So those are the people that are helping to plan. We just had a really successful trade show at the Rivers Casino in February. We have other industry forecasts, just things like that throughout the year. So we really try to bring some educational aspects to our members too. We put on events where they can, sign up for their CE, right, with real estate licenses. We've got to stay up on our course requirements. And then, we build bridges just through other companies, with law firms and banks. And it's really great, when we just had a vendor member join that was a window washing company. It just so happened a window washer that I was using at a commercial property, I couldn't get in hold of. So I just called the guy up and said, hey, I saw you just joined AMP. And he didn't even realize that's how it works. And I said, that's how it works. Now you're on this list and you're like a trusted vendor, and I'm going to call these people. So it's really great. I think it brings a lot of different kind of people together.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people don't realize too is the different apartment associations, how much advocacy they do, in terms of especially legislative issues.
Yes.
There's not a lot of voices for the apartment industry. And an apartment association and NMHC used to be together, and then just split them because they kind of got big. But can you talk to that? I mean, I know that's not the committee that you're on, but any of the stuff that they're doing inside of Pittsburgh, like I think I read something about a registration list that I think you guys are have been vocal and involved with. Just
Yes.
anything
Yes.
kind of trending like that.
Yeah, so exactly. We advocate for our members. So yes, there has been a rental registration that the city of Pittsburgh has been, sort of out there with, and AMP from the beginning for a decade, we have said, well, we want to talk to you about it. I think it would be great for you to sit down with actual apartment owners and understand implications and what this really means. And that hasn't been, that successful. We're really actually hopeful with our new administration that we can make some, better communication, inroads there. But I think one of the biggest goals that we have for advocacy is to make sure that our owners are heard, in a responsible and really respectful manner. One of the things that I don't like about real estate and being a property owner is like that negative connotation of like a landlord, and I think that's so unfortunate because there's so many good people in this business, and like everything, there's a bad apple or something, and then all of a sudden someone's a slumlord, and um, I think that's really a shame because I think a lot of us really try our absolute best to be, great property owners. And so those bad apples kind of run the headlines of, we need more control about over this or that, when the city has a lot in place already, with PLI and, inspections and things like that. So I think sometimes they just need to, it would benefit them to hear from the real side of people doing that work every day. There's also been a huge, push about absentee landlords. And I get that, if someone owns a property states away and never looks at it, that's an issue. But the people in AMP, we're right here. My office has been in the same spot for over 40 years, and my signs are on the buildings. You know who owns the properties. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to just change the perspective on how I think sometimes city and government wants to look at property owners. Like I would love for them to realize, like, this is just our business too. Like, we're trying to do the best that we can. If our properties aren't in great condition, aren't doing well, guess what? People aren't going to lease them. Like, we're going to have vacancies. So
Property owners have bills to pay too.
Oh, right. Exactly. And, no one wants to feel bad for a property owner. I get that, but, whenever, your county taxes go up and your city taxes and the water and sewage and everything else, we take a hit, but I get it, no one wants to feel bad for us, and they think we're, I don't even know what they think. I guess they think it's just so easy, but I laugh at my office. I always say, we're not doing brain surgery here, guys, but we're dealing with real life issues every day, with breakups and job losses and, people needing to relocate out of out of nowhere. And so, yeah,
it's dealing with people's homes, and that's what makes it more
right,
sensitive as opposed to if your office building has an issue, it's like, I'm there 9 to 5, but my
right.
home has an issue, and so people take it seems just more personal.
Yes,
But then the flip side, they don't, like you said, they don't understand it's a business, and we want our business to be profitable, and the best way for it to be profitable is to run it well and to provide
right.
safe, quality, affordable, housing. And
Right, exactly.
balance.
I can tell you the owners, the members of AMP, that is our unified thought and mission. I mean, no one who's a terrible property owner is going to join an organization where they're like, very visible, right? So the people of AMP, they're really diligent, really dedicated, property owners who have absolutely taken a risk to purchase a property, let's say, like no one wants to hear about like your mortgage that you took out or, the personal recourse that you signed for that building, but that's okay. My mom always said the thing about people in real estate is that they have a little bit of a gambler in them. And I think that she's right. The older I get and the more years, we're taking risks all the time, right? Whether it's on a building or a rate that we're getting or, thinking positively that we can turn something around, no one buys a building thinking I'm going to run, this thing's going to be worth half in 10 years. You're thinking like, I think I can make this better. I think I can get better rents. I think I can put, this work into it and make this even better for me. So we do have a little bit of, optimistic, maybe gambler in us.
It's calculated risk, but you're right. It is.
Yeah.
It's risk.
It's risk.
You brought up a point that I think, David and I talk a lot on a lot of the podcasts about leadership, about the interpersonal, about the connected. And I think you mentioned, like, sometimes groups are willing to sit down and have a conversation.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes they're not, right? What do you find? Are there common themes, I guess, of like why people will sit down or why they won't sit down? And what do you, both you individually as an owner, and then what do you do as an organization, an AMP? What do you do to try to overcome that when you're kind of dealing with difficult personalities? I know that's kind of a hard question, but I'd be curious on your take on it because you've seen a lot. So,
Yeah. Can you be a little more specific? Like, do you mean
so
like when we're
So
dealing?
let's go with the city, like when
Oh,
a city,
sure.
like, you said in the past, right? And maybe sometimes it's been difficult to sit down and have a conversation. I know there's a lot of hope with the new administration who's more willing to engage. So what kind of tacks have you taken in the past to maybe like encourage people to kind of sit down to realize like, hey, we're here to try to come up with a solution together, or like,
Yeah.
what are the different
No,
ways
we
that you?
just like raised our hand and said, "Hi, this is us. We really want to talk about this." And, it's just wasn't responded to, really. So, yeah, we're really optimistic and looking forward and thinking that, um, that with the new administration that we can make some positive inroads. We want to work with our city, where it's in our name, Metropolitan Pittsburgh, like we're all invested here. We all want, the city to do better and to do great. And um, so, yeah, I just think just always trying, always, we're like the girl that keeps getting asked to prom who says no, you know what I mean? Like, come on, give it one more shot, No, that's okay. We're gonna keep trying, keep smiling, keep, knocking on the door like it's the first time.
What are your goals and your hopes for AMP kind of in the next couple years?
Yeah, so I would love AMP to just continue on this great trajectory that we're on. We've got a great management company that's helping us. They help run our day to day so that our board can really just, we're a volunteer board, right? We all have our own full time jobs or businesses that we own and run. So just really, allowing the board, the freedom and the time to just talk to, how we can just grow membership, how we can have better events that really serve our group. We're really looking forward to having some more education events this year, more networking opportunities for, property owners together. And I just think if we keep doing that, like hopefully our membership can grow and grow and grow. AMP's interesting to me. I think because I have been around it so long, I think everyone knows about AMP, and sometimes I am surprised that, there'll be, a multifamily owner with, a lot of units, maybe 100 units or something like that. And they're like, what is AMP? I haven't heard of it. And so my goal would just be to get our name out there more, because I think once you hear about what we're doing and how we're advocating for our members, I think it's a no brainer to join and to get involved for all the reasons I'm saying, not just the advocacy that we're doing for owners, but just the networking and, someone to be able to call someone else to say, oh, I'm facing this issue, do you have any advice? I think that's invaluable, so I would love for our membership to grow and grow and grow. And I think we're in a strong position, this year for that to happen.
So does
So,
AMP have full-time staff as well? Or because you said something about a management company that runs it.
yes. So we were so lucky. About 2 years ago now, we found a group called Tykes, and they manage, not for profits essentially. And I know Brian knows our executive director, Kelly Shako. She's involved with some other groups as well. And she's got a full staff that can handle us, which is amazing. So, they've got people in IT and in marketing and, just they're amazing. When we show up at an event, it's running perfectly smoothly. And we're so lucky and grateful to have them.
And but you said something about the manager. That's in like they just work for AMP or they work for
No,
the
no,
company.
they manage about, I think, 7 or 8 other organizations that are
Okay.
similar to ours. Mhm.
That's cool, Mario. I hadn't heard of that. That's
Yeah. I'd be curious a little, and put you on the spot here. What's some of the lessons that real estate have taught you? I mean, you grew up in the family and then you kind of are gone and then you kind of came back to it. So I'd be kind of curious to see some of the lessons that, that you've learned in being in it. So.
Oh, I just think that I have learned a lot. And if I had to come up with them right now, I mean, it's kind of amazing. But I have learned that people are great. And I know we want to get down on people. We want to say, like kids these days or, whatever. But I have met so many interesting people, just in what I do. And I that's something I'll always be grateful, to. I've also learned, that you just have to try your best every day and try better the next day. And, like Dirk was saying, housing is emotional. And I tell my staff this, when we meet people, especially on the multifamily side, we are meeting them in a stressful time of their life. And sometimes it's a good stress and sometimes it's a bad stress, right? Sometimes they're moving to Pittsburgh because they got a new job. Sometimes they're moving because they lost a job. Sometimes they're moving because, it's a new house, it's a new relationship, a couple's moving in together. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of emotions that we are not privy to, right? All we see is their application, and if they qualify, great, But sometimes, we're catching them at a time of life that is a big change. Moving and starting a new job, getting married. I think those are listed as the most stressful situations in someone's life. And there we are. Hi, welcome to your new apartment. Here are your keys, And so sometimes they bring, a really positive, demeanor. And sometimes, they're just blowing up and you're thinking, what happened? Everything was great when we showed you the apartment. What happened between now and then? So I always just try to tell everyone, like, take a deep breath. You don't know what someone's going through, right? It's that age old, saying, we all have a cross to bear. You don't know what yours is, and just be kind and get through the day. And sometimes it's a really great day. And sometimes, you're getting yelled at on the phone because Comcast can't set somebody up. And you're thinking, wow, okay, I didn't know that was going to flip you out so much today. You don't know what they're dealing with,
What's some of the like, how do you teach your team? Like, what are some of the tactics that you take and like to maybe take that moment of pause and then help that person ease that transition? So.
Yeah, we just always say, take a deep breath. I've become a big proponent of like not everything requires an immediate response, right? Sometimes they're I'm not talking about, a ceiling leak. We're going to get there. But, when someone's blasting off that negative email or really, tonal thing, or leave a message that's, I think, I would describe as rude, just say, take a deep breath. Not everything requires an immediate response, because sometimes then you respond emotionally, and that's not always right, So we just try to say, be patient. I always say, kill someone with kindness. You can usually disarm someone, if you just start with like, hey, let's have this conversation. I'd love to end this conversation with a resolution, or to better understand where you're coming from, and you can usually get someone to bring down their, if they're at a 10, bring them down to a 5, and sometimes you can't. And I just say, hey, this is my thing I go back to. We're not doing brain surgery here. No one's on the table. We're not going to lose someone today, and if it's a matter of giving them an extra day here or a rent concession there, it's okay. At the end of the day, I want to sleep at night with a clear conscience. And that's what I tell my team. We're going to be as nice as we can. And we can blow up in the office and say, can you believe that? But when we are public facing or, resident facing, we're going to be as kind as we possibly can.
I always joked with our team is like, sometimes it's like, it's like being in a team. Like if you're in the locker room, you can say a few things, right? But when we leave, we're all wearing the same jersey and we're all on the same team. And remember that. So
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Sometimes you have to have hard talks internally, but there's a place to have those talks, and it's usually not in the public forum. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
Still that way.
We talked about, like, those graduating high school and this. What would be your advice, I guess, to individuals actually coming up actually through high school into college in general, and then those that are interested in real estate? Because I imagine those that are listening to this probably have some inkling of real
Yeah,
estate interest.
I hope so. And I've been my kids are not college age yet. My oldest is a sophomore in high school, so we're only just starting to think about that post-secondary, schooling. But I have nieces and nephews who are in college, and I am so pleased to see that, real estate is sometimes a major in some of these schools now, or
Yeah.
you can take
Do you know what school has the most recent major for real
um
estate?
no, I don't.
Duquesne.
Duquesne,
Duquesne.
yeah, exactly, right.
Duquesne University. Yeah.
Exactly. You see these things come up and you're like, that's great. Or even taking a finance class with a real estate, concentration or something like that. I think that's so interesting because I don't believe, certainly I wasn't even in that mindset when I was in college, but I don't believe that was an offering, in an undergraduate program, maybe in in an MBA program or something like that. You could take something more real estate focused, but so I just think that's so cool. I think anyone who maybe has an interest should enroll in a class, and you never know. I think there's a lot to learn. Even I've heard also of some undergraduate students who are even getting their real estate license. Right, like in the summer, they're taking their classes and taking their exam because you can do that remotely or online. I think that's so great because you never know, when you might come into real estate or when it might interest you.
Yeah, it was funny. We were doing some intern interviews for this summer, and a few of them they just went out and got their real estate license on their own and kind of
Right.
showed the initiative. Yeah,
Right. Okay.
yeah.
So, I mean, I've kind of only heard of this. I haven't met anyone who's done it yet, but I think it's awesome. It gets you out there. You know what I mean? Even if they're not going to close the deal, like it doesn't matter. Just taking the classes, I think would be so interesting for them, and what they're learning.
Absolutely.
Initiative.
Yeah.
Yes. And it shows initiative. That's absolutely right. I think real estate people in general are also people, right? Like you're out there, you're meeting people, you've got to talk to a buyer and a seller, you've got to come to a compromise. Like I think those are just a lot of life skills, that I think would be good for anybody, especially if you're interested in business. Or if you're going to go to physical therapy and then completely change your
Listen, I think I've got a lot of real estate related injuries. Maybe a physical therapist could
Yeah.
help me with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Dirk and I offline talk about our injuries all the time, so we might have to have a consult.
Yeah, it's for real. I know.
Be a good
Well, awesome.
specific specialty practice.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we usually wrap up with just kind of some random questions we call the lightning round. So I'll
Okay.
kick it off. I always like to ask, best book you've read recently.
Actually, I have recently read a really good book. And it was called The Correspondent. So
Ooh. With fiction, nonfiction?
fiction. Yep,
Okay.
fiction.
All right.
I'm actually in a book club. My girlfriends and I pick a book, and my husband likes to call it wine club with a book problem. So, but we always pick a great book. We actually just picked a book. The next book is called The Art of Gathering, and it's talking, I think I read the book jacket, and it's about having good communication skills. And when you get together with people, having good discussion skills. So I'm excited to read that.
That's awesome.
My youngest daughter loves reading. She reads, like a thick book every week, and she's 14, almost 15.
That's amazing. Good for
so
you.
Yesterday she wanted me to take her to Barnes & Noble, and so I did. But I made her a deal. She only likes fiction, and I said, if you read a book of my choice, I'll buy you another book. And books are expensive. Especially when you read a book a week. It's And so I told her to read Never Split the Difference. And now, granted, that's not a kid's. It's not a bad book. It's just it's negotiating. And so she was like, well, what's it about? And I told her, and she goes, Dad, that's manipulation. I was like, no, it's not. It's negotiating. She goes, trying to convince someone to do what you want is called manipulation, Dad. And I was like, no, I promise, it's negotiating.
Wait till she starts marrying you and she starts using those techniques on
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Right.
Oh, I said, you'll be surprised. And I said, because she likes fiction, that book has stories in it where he implements it. And I said, so it's probably a better book than many of the books I've read that she
Yeah.
might like. So
Mhm.
my question is, what's the most recent song on your playlist?
Thankful by Forrest Frank, actually. Yeah. My kids like to say I'm an old lady, which is fine with me. But if a song comes up on my car, like on the screen, I'll take a picture of it and I'll text them and I'll say, guys, how about this one? And they're like, that's been out for months, you know? So, but that's the latest one I just sent them a picture of. It's really good.
Funny story on songs is, so I got back from a golf trip and we listen to random music sometimes, and the last golf trip was a bunch of sea shanties, right? So Nathan Evans sea shanties. So
Yeah.
I started listening to Nathan Evans, and my 3-year-old now, her favorite song is "Bully in the Alley" by Nathan Evans, which is a sea shanty, which my wife makes fun of me for all the time, because I'll be like, "What song do you want to listen to?" And she's like, "Bully in the Alley," and so
That's so sweet. That's a
good.
great age. I hope you're
Yeah.
enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a 3 and a 1-year-old, so it's busy, and yeah, so I'm like, I'm just beginning. I'm getting tips from you and Derek every day. So
Oh yeah. No, you know what? They're great. And I'm lucky to have them. I've got 3 kids and I'm trying to enjoy every phase, you know, and when they were little, it was hard, but um, you know, I think it's interesting. When they're little, it's physically exhausting, right? The sleeping, the caring for
Yeah.
them, picking them up everywhere. But when they're older, it can get like mentally exhausting, you know. Now I'm worried about like how late they are out at night and all of that. And you know, it's just, but it's so great. You know, they bring us so much joy. You know, I always say like that they're the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, and all this other stuff is great too. I love what I do. I'm lucky, but you know, it's just it's for them. You know, and
yeah, comes down to family at the end of the day. They'll be there long after we stop working. So yeah,
yes, right, right, right.
yeah.
Whether that
Well,
apartment gets leased or not, you know, I'm coming home and as soon as I come in the door, you know, mom, you know, and it's like, yes. And they always say, how was your day? And I say, it's better now, you know,
yeah.
even if it was good or it wasn't good, that's okay. You know, now it's better.
Well, Elizabeth, where can we'll put it in the notes too. Where can people find out more information about AMP
Yes.
and connect? So
Yeah. So our website is aamp.us. So amp.us. Um, a lot of us will be at your event on April 16th, actually. So if anyone's interested, they can, you know, find us there. We've got a great golf outing coming up in June at Edgewood Country Club. But yeah, if they would just go to our website, there's right there about membership and, you know, how to reach us.
awesome. Well, hey, I thank you very much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure, and
Thank
we'll
you.
look forward to. And thank you all, listeners. And hopefully, we'll be getting this out. Hopefully, we'll get this episode out before April 16th, so they can actually hear about the event.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you
Well,
both
thank you.
for having me. Thanks, Dirk. Thanks, Brian.
Nice meeting you.